Okay. Thanks everybody for attending our GeoSync Go webinar today. We're focusing still on the GeoSync Go Desktop, and we're going to be looking at creating new point features. GeoSync Go Cloud Service is a geospatial toolbox. I always want to remember that. It's a set of tools that are designed to plug into the work that you do to help you be more efficient and more productive. Cloud Service provides tools in a number of areas, including mobile software. But what we're going to look at today is the desktop software, again, which runs on a Windows computer. So we say new point features. Why would we want to create new point features? And again, we're working from the desktop software. Why would come to, in some cases, if our work needed, if we needed locations for our work, such as our workflow that we involved visiting certain sites and doing inspections, or we were putting together a certain number of work orders where we needed to identify locations so that crews could go and find, could respond to requests for certain types of repair activities or inspection activities. So we might be working where we have a list of addresses or IDs, or we may just be marking things that are visible on the map. So new point features might be set just because we need locations for our workflow. Another thing, just another part of that might be particularly for a city where we have new, for planning and zoning, or we have new planning permits coming in, say new building permits or construction permits, and we want to basically get those into our workflow so we can deploy those in the field for inspections or review. Another reason for creating point features might be just to create a customized data set. You could quickly use the GeoSync Go Desktop to populate a set of point data that then could become part of your a GIS layer that you share with others. It may not be really part of any specific workflow. It might just be you need to create a set of points of certain types of buildings or intersections or some other type of feature that you could easily see from the map. In order to create point features, there are certain requirements that we have to meet. These are some of the basic requirements. The desktop software needs to be set to allow editing. When the software is initially installed, allow editing is not the default. So at some point, if you just do this one time on a given computer, you would need to make sure that that software is set to allow editing. Also, the desktop software, in order to set new points, has to be connected to your workflow database. So you have to have a live connection in order to be able to set points. The active layer that you're working with has to be a workflow layer. So if you exported data from ArcGIS and you have kind of a static snapshot of your GIS data, you cannot add new points to that. You can only add new data or new points to a workflow layer, which is the workflow has been designed and set up using the workflow wizard and meets those requirements. And then also the workflow layer has to be set to allow adding new features. So workflow layers can be set up for read-only to limit editing. So you've got to make sure that that workflow layer is set to allow add features. And if those requirements are met, then you can create new point data. So what can you do in this? We can add a new point feature. So we can find a location and we can create using an X and Y. We can create a new point feature. We can edit the attributes associated with that. We can then come back later. We can actually delete that feature from the desktop, or we can move the location of that particular point feature. And those are the primary things that we can do from the desktop. So let's take a look at an example of creating point features from the desktop. So in this case, I have my GeoSync Go Desktop software open. And what I have in here on the right is a list of new construction sites. So my purpose here for setting points is I have a workflow that I'm managing in which I have new construction sites in my community, and I want to get those located, and then I'm going to distribute those locations to inspectors so they can make regular visits to those sites for environmental type inspections. So what I have is I want to be able to get these points on the map into a layer with some basic information that my inspection crews need. But before we do that, we need to go through and make sure that our desktop meets the minimum requirements in order to be able to add points. So one of the things we said, we need to have a database connection. We can check that by looking at this label at the bottom of the software interface. If the light bulb is on for database, then we do have a connection to our database, and we can actually open that up. And if we're a little bit skeptical, we can always do an establish and test connection just to make sure that we're connected. In this case, we pass those connections. So we do have a database connection. That's one of the things that's required. The other thing we need to make sure of is that the actual desktop software is set to allow editing, and we can check on that by going to our preferences. So we can go to Project Settings and Tools, Preferences, which will open up our preference dialog. That can take a few seconds as it gets all the settings together. So we're waiting on that to open. Here's our preference dialog. So from the very front screen on here, we would need to see the options that we need to make sure are turned on if we want to do editing. Our GeoSync GO Desktop Master Timer on, Auto Refresh Workflow Layers, and then the Go Desktop Feature Editing and Move and Edit needs to be checked. So default when software is installed is these two items are checked, but the feature editing is unchecked. So you got to make sure that that option is checked, and we're good to go. So we can click OK, and that'll make sure we save those settings. And so our desktop is configured to allow us to add, move, and edit point features. It'll take just a few seconds for it to actually save and close dialog. Once the preferences are changed, sometimes it's a good idea to go ahead and refresh your project just to make sure that those settings are reapplied. So at this point, we've got a database connection, and we're set to allow editing. So now let's check on our layer. Our workflow layer that we're going to use is our GS construction site. I'm going to open that layer up, and we said that it's critical that that layer has to be a workflow layer. So when we open that up, one way I know immediately whether this is a workflow layer is when this opens up, this timer will start running. So the workflow layer actually gets a snapshot of data from our workflow database, and then it sits there and it lets us know how long it's been since we refreshed that layer. But if this timer is running, we know that that's a workflow layer. Another way that we could check on that, though, is we could go take a look at our layer settings. So I'm gonna clear the layer for a moment. I'm gonna reset my layer to none. We're gonna go back out and take a look at Manage Layers. So there's another option, Project Settings and Tools. We can go to Manage Layers, and we can see here's our GS construction site layer. And one way we can look here, we know pretty quickly if this has a workflow ID set in it and it has a table set, then we know this is a workflow layer, so that's critical. The other thing that's necessary is that if we want to be able to add features, then both the Allow ODBC Add and Allow ODBC Edit, both of these items need to be checked for that particular layer. And they are. If they're not checked, then you need to check them and then click Update, and that'll save those settings for this particular workflow layer and then close. let's go back and open up our GS construction site layer again. We can see that this we don't have any construction sites at this point in our work area, but we have everything set. We're allow editing is available for our desktop, and our database connection is live and valid, and our workflow layer has the proper settings. So now what we want to do is we need to set points, and here's our target over here on the right side of the screen. We have 4 new construction sites that we want to set the points for. Now, some of the options that I have, if I'm really familiar with my community, I might be able to just look at this address, and I may not need to do anything other than just zoom on the map. I know that it turns out this hospital parking, North Eagle Creek Drive, is just around the corner from our office. So it's really easy for me just to zoom in because I know exactly where that is. There's North Eagle Creek. This is the parking lot, and this is a new construction site. So I'm just going to go to that location, find it on the map, and then in order to create a new point, I right-click with the mouse on the desktop. It sets a marker, tells me what the location of that is, latitude and longitude. And then if I've had that location at where I want it, then I can use the Add Map feature button. When I click on that button, it creates a new point feature for me and opens up the attribute dialog. So I'm going to put a location, fill out a few things on here. I'm going to call this 100 North Eagle Creek Drive, and then I could fill out information related to, such as contractor, and we'll call that CDP as the contractor. We can put information in here, the contractor email, contact, and that type of stuff. I'm going to set this construction status to open because it's under construction and it's a commercial site. And then in this case, I have some sort of inspection frequency, which I'll set to monthly, and then we're going to go ahead and set today's date as the next inspection date. I filled out, this is the base information that I need for this. Close and save, and now I've created a new construction point. And if I ID that point now, we can see that this is 100 North Eagle Creek Drive. And also, I didn't give this a name. I needed to give this actually a site name. So I'm going to edit this now. I select it, and I can go back and edit the attributes again. And we're going to call this hospital parking. So we now have a name because I forgot to enter that the first time. Close and save. If I ID that, then now we see that everything is set the way that we wanted, at least for this point. And any time that I have additional information, such as owner or address, I can always ID that feature, edit the database record, and make those changes. So that's one way to set to create a new point. But let's go through. In this case, I've got some addresses. So I'm going to use a little different method here. We're going to look for commercial building 1, and that's at 201 Fountain Court. I've got an address tool set up here using my local address data. I can click that in and enter it, and that did not find a match. So now I'm just going to search based on the street because for some reason that didn't match. So somebody wrote this down wrong. I believe that should have been 231 Fountain Court. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. I can select that, and it shows the location of this particular site. So yeah, that is the correct place, but I really would like that point to be over closer to Fountain Court, just from a visual perspective. So I'm going to set a point here, and then we'll go through and add, just like we did before, and we can call this commercial building 1, and the location is actually at 231 Fountain Court. And we're going to set the construction status of this to open. Construction type is commercial. Inspection frequency is monthly, and we'll set a date. And these are all optional. This is what the workflow that I have requires, that I have set up to make to provide the correct information for the field crews. But your workflow may be different, probably will be different depending on what the application is. We'll close and save, and now we have another point. Now we have 2 construction sites. We can ID that and see that information. I have another site which is at 175 Yorkshire. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that, 75 Yorkshire. I'm just going to type in 175 York, and I find that location. That's a good address, and that point is exactly where I want it to be. Now you'll notice when I do an address match and I select that, it actually sets a point and makes it ready for me to add a record. So this is a shortcut. If I have good address information, I can type the address, and as soon as I enter that, it'll create a marker for me ready to go. Click the add button, and I'm ready to create another site. Commercial building. Can't spell building 2. Location is 175 Yorkshire Boulevard. Record, we'll call this New Elementary School. Address is 3288 Eagle View Lane. Again, if I have this other information, I can go ahead and fill it out now or later. We'll mark this to open. Construction type, still call this a commercial site. Monthly. And then set a next inspection, close and save. Now we've actually set all 4 of our points. Now we'll be ready to we can publish that information for use in the field on a mobile device. So set the points in the office. Then using the cloud service, I can deliver that information to the field inspectors using the cloud service. They can sync those to their tablets. Or if they're using a web application, then they would immediately get those updated locations ready to go do their work and do their inspection data with that. Now, as it turns out, I made a slight mistake on this parking lot. I thought I knew where that location was, but now I've realized it really isn't this parking lot area. It's actually over here is where that location is. So I need to move this particular point. So we have a tool to be able to move a point, and to do that, we set a location where we want the new point to be. We have a tool. We can come to our tool on the map side and create a move point. And you'll notice when I do that, it labels this as a move marker. Select the point you want to move, and now we have a new tool over here on the toolbar called Move Map Feature. Select that. And now that feature has been moved to this new location. I can then clear the move point, and we can see now that our hospital parking is now at this new location. So that's the basic tools to be able to move a point. If I need to erase one of these because it turns out this was not a valid construction site, or I need to change one of those, then if I want to delete one, I ID it, I still go to edit, and then I can use the delete button to delete that record. One thing about deleting point features in GeoSync Go, when you delete, it marks the feature as deleted. It doesn't actually remove it or purge it from the database. So it marks it as deleted, which means up until you actually purge that record out using the dashboard and doing a little more intentional work with that, that feature would still be recoverable. So when you delete, you're just marking features for deletion. You're not actually purging them or removing them from the database workflow or from the workflow database. So in this case, I'm not going to delete this. I'm just going to go ahead and X out of this. So we've now created 4 different construction sites, and these now could be published for use with GeoSync Go. So if I wanted to publish those, I could go to my Publish Layers tool, select construction sites to the cloud. Now those sites are ready for syncing to GeoSync Go mobile. They're ready to go for the field crew. Field crew just needs to get to a Wi-Fi connection or some sort of internet connection, sync their tablet, and they would have that information available. If they're using one of the web applications that we have, then that data would just be available without syncing on the tablet. It would just show up the next time they refresh the web browser. So we'll close that. So now we've published these sites. Now one other thing that might be useful in the field would be for one of these construction sites, I might have some documents such as a site plan or some other photos or some other documents that could be useful in the field. So if I select, I'm going to select this commercial building again. It turns out I actually have a plat that's been saved digitally for this, and this would be helpful to the field crew to be able to pull that plat up on their phone or tablet and take a look at it. I can link that document from the desktop by, first of all, I ID the feature, and then I go to the Media tab above the map, and then I can add files, and I can browse to my pictures, and it turns out I have a property plat available, and I'm going to go ahead and add that property plat. And if I want to preview that, I can double click on it, and we can see here that we actually have the actual plat for this particular piece of property. Now, once this has been linked, then again, this once I add that media, the media is then uploaded to the cloud and then is available for connection to GeoSync Go mobile. As long as it has an internet connection or if you got a Wi-Fi connection, you're going to be able to see that document for using one of the web applications, and again have a data plan with an internet connection. Then that property plat would immediately be available to the field crew. So let's go back and revisit. We can set points. Points are set workflow specific, so you have to use a workflow layer, so you have to have a specific purpose for that. In order to set points, you need to make sure your desktop software is configured properly, the layer is set, and then to set a point, you can right-click and set a user marker on the screen. If you want to use the address tools, then you can type in an address. You go to the address, and it will automatically create a user marker for you, and you're ready to go ahead and add a feature. If a new point feature is, if you identify a point feature and you'd like to link some media to that, photos or documents that you want for reference purposes, then you can go to the Media tab and add that information. That completes our webinar for today on creating point features. As always, if you have questions, you can reach us at info@cdpengineers.com or at the geosyncgo.com website. If you have topics that you'd like for us to present as part of a webinar, then let us know, and we'll be happy to create a webinar and get that scheduled. So thanks for attending today.